welcome to episode 4 of Sorastro's Descent painting series, sponsored by Fantasy Flight Games and GTS Distribution. In this video we'll be painting Grisban the Thirsty from Fantasy Flight Games Descent Journeys in the Dark 2nd edition. Let's take a look at the painting stages. After priming the miniature in white, we'll apply the base colours, and we'll get to enjoy plenty of warm browns and reds. We'll then apply just 2 separate washes to introduce some depth. We'll then highlight the miniature before finishing him off with some facial details, and as usual, I'll be providing a scenic base. Let's jump straight in with the base colours. I'm going to begin by painting the skin with an equal mix of Bugman's Glow and Cadian Fleshtone. A second layer of this should give us a nice solid tone. Next, I'm going to paint the metallic areas using some Leadbelcher mixed with some Stegadon scale green and a small dab of black. We can use this for the axe as well as the metal detailing on the helmet, belt and the keg. For the red areas I'm using Mephiston Red, which I'm darkening with a little Caliban Green. Next, I'm going to mix roughly equal measures of XV88 and Skrag Brown. I'm then using this to paint the keg and the handle of the axe. I'm also using this for the more orangey sections of the clothing, which means the tasset, as well as the trim on the tunic. For the gloves and boots, I'm using some Karak Stone, which I'm mixing with just a small amount of XV88. And for the remaining clothes, I'm using a roughly equal mix of Steel Legion Drab and Gorthor Brown. Next, I'm going to paint the beard using Vallejo's Green Grey. You could also create this tone using Ulthuan Grey mixed with a tiny amount of Ogrin Camo. I'm then painting the elbow patches with some Karak Stone. I'm now going to paint the trim on the sleeves, firstly with some Ivory. And I'm then going to use some German Grey to paint the jagged design. Finally, I'm going to paint the metallic hair ties using the same silver mix that we used for the axe earlier. With that done, we're ready to add some shade. I'm now going to add two simple shades to Grisban, starting with a roughly equal mix of Agrax Earthshade, Nuln Oil and Lahmian Medium. I'm then using this to shade all of the brown areas of the figure, as well as the beard and hair. I'm also shading the metallic areas with this, except for the blade of the axe. I'm then going to use some neat Reikland Fleshshade for the skin. Once done, we're ready for the highlights. Working in no particular order, I'm going to begin by highlighting the gloves and boots, and I'm using Karak Stone mixed with a small amount of Light Ochre. We could then lighten this with a little screaming skull. Next I'm going to highlight the red areas, and I'm starting with some Evil Sunz Scarlet, darkened with just a little Caliban Green. This is going to cover most of the cloak except for the darkest recesses. With all of these highlights, I'm working over each area more than once to gently build the intensity. I will often run a damp brush along the border of a highlight to help blur the boundary. I'm now going to brighten this by increasing the amounts of Evil Sunz Scarlet in the mix. And I'm now using pure Evil Sunz Scarlet. I'm thinning all of my paints with water, but you may wish to use medium instead. I'm now going to mix in some Wild Rider Red. We should now be covering fairly small areas with this. I will often thin the paint down to a heavy glaze consistency to help create smooth transitions, especially for the flatter areas like the back of the cloak. I'm going to finish the highlights off with a few small touches of pure Wild Rider Red. Next, I'm going to highlight the darker brown areas, starting with a 2-to-1 mix of Gorthor Brown and Karak Stone. The main focus here wants to be on the knees and the belly. We can then lighten this by mixing in some additional Karak Stone in a couple of stages. Here I'm simply stippling the highlights, which just means dabbing the paint on. I'm doing this partly because there's little room to manoeuvre the brush without going over the lines, and partly because it gives a more textured look that suits the leather well and contrasts nicely with the smoother finish of the cloak. I'm going to add a small final highlight with some pure Karak Stone. I'm pushing the highlights quite far here, as Grisban's belly is quite an important character feature, cleverly emphasised by the lines of stitching. I'm now going to highlight the keg, tasset and axe handle using a roughly equal mix of Balor Brown and Skrag Brown. I'm now brightening this with the addition of some Light Ochre. The main focus here is on trying to articulate the planks of wood that make the keg. I'm going to use some thinned Rhinox Hide to help strengthen the definition of some of these grooves. And I'm now using some pure Light Ochre. Next, I'm going to provide a few light highlights to the beard using the original green-grey. And I'm going to lighten this by mixing in a little white. I'm now going to highlight the skin, starting with some Cadian Fleshtone. And I'm now using Kislev Flesh. Just a small hit on each cheekbone and the end of the nose is all we can do here. I'm also now going to paint the eyebrows using some green-grey. Before highlighting the axe, I'm going to first apply a dark glaze, using a mix of black and Stegadon scale green. So I'm using a brush full of both the black and the Stegadon scale green, mixed with around 4 large brushes of water. Although it's not articulated on the figure, I'm going to use this glaze to differentiate the flat part of the axe head from the bladed edges. We can do this in 4 or 5 applications until we have the depth and definition that we're looking for. I'm now going to apply some highlights using Stormhost Silver, which I'm mixing with some Karak Stone. And I'm using this to bring out the bladed sections of the axe head. We can also use this to add a few small highlights to the other metallic details on the miniature. Finally, I'm going to highlight the elbow patches with a touch of Karak Stone. We're now ready for some finishing touches. I'm now going to paint the eyes, starting with some Vallejo's Ivory. I'm then placing the pupils with some German grey. It's not unusual to have to do a fair bit of retouching when the eyes are this small. Here you can see I'm reapplying some ivory to correct this oversized pupil. I'm also going to paint the row of upper teeth with the ivory. Next, I'm going to mix some Carroburg Crimson with some Reikland Fleshshade, and I'm adding a brush of medium. I'm then using this to shade the mouth, and I'm also going to use it to give Grisban a red nose. Finally, I'm going to add a few bright highlights to the skin with some Flayed One Flesh. Mixing Kislev Flesh with some white would also be fine for this. Once we've finished painting, it's time to give the miniature a protective matte spray. And as usual, I'm rebasing the hero with a scenic base, as detailed in episode 1. I've also chosen to add a few tufts of grass to finish the base off. And this completes Grisban the Thirsty. Thank you for watching. With Grisban complete, we're now halfway through the base set heroes, which means we still have 4 heroes and plenty of monsters to go. My special thanks go out to the generous patrons and sponsors who are helping to fund this work. Join me again soon as we continue painting miniatures from Descent: Journeys in the Dark. Happy painting!